Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blindspot. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. It's kind of interesting, like right from the start, we had Kurt going back to his place and finding Rich there. And I love Rich, like, it's like, because Kurt's like, oh, this is breaking and entering. He's like, it's not breaking and entering if you have a key. And Kurt's like, when do you get a key to my place? And he immediately changes the subject. I love that he did that. But I really like what Rich did in this episode because him and Laurel, I love that whole thing of like, oh, she's singing the periodic table song, and then like Patterson's like, oh, I know that so much, and Reed's like, well, of course you would, just I mean, considering you being, once again, Bill Nye's your dad and everything, so of course like that's going to play a role in your situation. But you even have Rich being like, oh yeah, I lost my virginity to this song twice, and Patterson's like, oh. But what he did for Laurel in this episode, I thought was such a sweet thing. Kind of just shows you what kind of person Rich is. I mean, obviously he's been a different person ever since he joined the team last season and everything. I mean, he's always kind of had his softer spots, but you see him trying to do whatever he can to make Laurel feel okay. I love that Patterson's like, Rich is like, no, you know what I was thinking? And Patterson's like, okay, we duct tape the area, cover the area and duct tape it with all the stuff, so that nothing spreads anymore. And Rich is like, oh, that's actually a better idea because I was just going to say she's going to die. And Patterson's like, Rich! And he's kind of like, sorry. But he actually kind of bonded with Laura, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing, like some of the conversations. I mean, obviously, like kind of setting up a knock-knock joke just to kind of get her to smile. He's like, oh, not my best work, but, I still owe you that steak dinner, and the whole aspect of like him talking to her about friends. Because I think he mentions like this movie called Outbreak, I think is what he was mentioning, but basically saying the monkey that was in the same monkey that plays Marcel in Friends. And she's like, oh, he's like, you've never seen Friends. And he actually ends up explaining, we cut back to him later on explaining an episode to her, just the whole like, oh, Ross and Rachel being on break situation and that whole situation. That's like, oh, I was like, hopefully she does make it out of this. Hopefully it comes close to it. But it's like, no, sadly she ended up dying because we end up finding. Because I love what they did with the whole Beck situation. Because at first I was kind of suspicious of him. Because like the moment like Patterson and them were kind of like, oh, let us help. He's like, no, don't do. He gave good reasons because he's kind of like, oh yeah, like I'd rather you not look into this or think about it too much, because it's like if you look into it too much, you're going to start overanalyzing things, and the thing that's worse than the disease is the human mind, because you're kind of thinking, what is this? What if it's this? What if it's that? So he's like, I am a professional in this situation, so let me handle it. But in the long scheme of things, it's kind of like, man, because a lot of stuff didn't line up. That plus the fact is they were carrying guns, because even Kurt was like, yeah, I really wouldn't expect you to need guns, but he kind of once again gave another reasonable explanation of like, oh yeah, people kind of go a little crazy in this situation. So, and even at one point being like, yeah, normally you probably be this part where I'm like, oh, I don't need any outside help, but it's like, we'll take whatever you want. So that made me kind of go, oh, maybe he's not that suspicious, but it's like, yep, turns out he's the one that killed Laurel, because he's actually the one that made this, virus, because it's meant to be like a virus that can spread through spores but also from human to human, and he just accelerated it. And it's just kind of like all of them in the building, they weren't like patients, they were lab rats that became experimented on, because he was trying to use this as an excuse to test and see what this does to other people, because this is meant to be like a bioweapon. It's like, oh, this is for the purposes of protecting our country, that type of thing, of just kind of going way overboard. Because even later on they talk about the fact is, yeah, the Pentagon pretty much denies this ever happened. It's like, yeah, they probably would kind of disavow, back and all that. So it's just kind of sad that, luckily no one else died, but it still sucks that Laurel died just because she came in trying to help with this whole situation. I love like her kind of doing her whole thing with the dolls and stuff like that. Oh, it's not going to hurt that much. And then Patterson and Rich looking at each other. But like, it's like, oh man, that would have been cool. Like, her and Rich being pals and stuff like that. But sadly, things played out the way they did. We also had Allie coming into the episode, which is interesting because it turns out she's the one that Kurt was talking to. And obviously, as I thought, Kurt later on kind of brings it up, but he was interpreting her meeting with that person as like, which we later on find like that woman's name is Violet, but it's like, oh, Jane met up with Violet because it's like, no, she's probably going to help Jane with the whole, like, if the Zip situation gets worse, she'll kill herself. Like he's thinking like she's probably connected to that. Maybe she's going to end up helping Jane disappear in that regard. So it's kind of like that. I figured that was probably going to be where his initial thoughts were going to be. And the thing is, it's just he didn't know what it was. Allie didn't want to help him because she was thinking, like, the fact is you're acting a little crazy about this situation, Kurt. Which he's like, she's the one that's hiding secrets and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, but she's not the one. You're the one that's following your wife around. Like, it's like the fact of the matter is talk to Jane, Because the one thing that would ruin a marriage is secrets. And, that kind of started sinking in for Weller. But Allie had his back when they went to go try and rescue Jane because she got injected. But Kurt bursting right in and threatening Beck, and it's like injecting him and being like, you better give me the cure because it's not just my wife's life that's on the line, it's yours too now. So that was interesting. Now on the other side of things, let's tie in some other things. For one, we had the whole situation with Jane, which I thought was so fascinating in a sense of like she's getting help from Boston, which Boston's doing the whole thing about Norwalls and all that, and even Roman's kind of like popping in being like, okay, there's still time for us to find somebody else. And then Boston kind of does his thing, and then Roman's like, no, never mind, forget what I said, this guy's perfect for the job. And Remy, or rather, is kind of like ruthless in this episode. Like she's kind of making everyone in there panicking and stuff like that, almost kind of trying to turn people against each other because it's like, oh man, what if we're infected? Like sowing the seeds of doubt within people. It's like, I mean, they wouldn't, the government wouldn't just lock us in here to die now, would they? And it's like, you were savage messing with people's heads like that. And even that lady Shelley, and it's so interesting, like no one else, I mean, at least the other dude she talked to, maybe other people, I mean, obviously she's been working in the FBI building for quite a while, but for like, because the lady Shelley she was talking to, making her like, oh, your lymph nodes kind of look like they were kind of a little inflated, kind of big for a second, but maybe it's just my imagination. This stuff kind of gets inside your head and stuff like that. And she's like, Jane, you don't think I'm infected, do you? And obviously that kind of catches everyone else's attention. That situation didn't turn as ugly as I thought it was going to in that regard. But the fact of the matter is she called Jane by her name, made me go like, oh, she must at least be adequately, you must be acquaintances on some level for her to call you Jane, like on a personal level like that. But maybe it's just kind of like a professional situation of like, yeah, you've been around the office enough that like I said, it's just the other guy she was talking to didn't really refer to her as by name. But the fact is that this lady Shelley did kind of made me go like, that kind of makes it seem like it's you stabbing the dagger in even deeper and twisting a little bit. She was very like sadistic. Even the lady that came up and like, Jane, are you okay? She's like, oh man, I think I'm sick. And it's like, don't worry, I'll get help. And it's like, man, you were just good at this whole manipulation thing. So, but once again, she did that thing of she hugged Kurt at the end when it was all said and done. Roman is like, later on, he's like, oh yeah, you need to stop hugging him every time he gets suspicious, which I was wondering, is that what she was doing, or is that kind of a knee-jerk reaction? Because it's like, because you see it look in her eyes and almost kind of like, she almost feels, you see like, there's almost kind of warmness she feels from hugging Kurt, and then she sees Roman's judgmental eyes, and then she kind of, is kind of looking away. So that's what part of me wonders, is it just 100% like her just covering herself, or is it more so like, there's a little bit of Jane coming to the surface, or is there some part of her that was actually thankful for Kurt? Because her and Roman were having that whole conversation about like, oh yeah, like these people should die or whatever. Because, for Jane or Remy, it's kind of like, no, these people signed up to be with the FBI, so whatever happens to them. Same thing for Kurt. Just kind of like, okay. But because even Roman was like, oh yeah, what we could do is just go over there and kill that lady who's in front of where we need to go. I mean, be a last big surprise for the FBI before we go break Shepard out. So there's that. What I also thought was kind of interesting was the whole conversation with Boston, where she's like, okay, finally, tell me what the whole thing about the Norwalls is. And he's like, oh, so basically the whole horn thing with the Norwalls, it's not meant to be, it's not actually a horn. It's kind of like, I think it was like more like teeth, and it's not a weapon. It's how they talk. The fact of the matter is, what's endangering them isn't like for their survival. It isn't a predator. It's isolation, which is so interesting because it's like where she is right now, Jane, or rather Remy, is so isolated. The only person she has in her head is Roman, which is interesting because they have that big blow up at the end, because it's like, oh, Jane's not the reason why you died. You died because you fell for the boss's daughter. And then the fact of the matter is, after I went undercover to be Jane, you fell apart and you died because you were weak. And, and he's like, oh, if I, I'm not going to sit around here and let you waste another opportunity like that. So she's like, so stop following me around, get out of my head. And he disappears, which is interesting. And I say that because it's like now she's back to being alone. At the very least, even if it was just in her head, she had Roman. And I think that probably made her feel good because at least some semblance of who she was back then was still alive, because all of Sandstorm is gone now, officially gone. I mean, I'm sure Borden's still around kicking in some deep dark hole, much like Shepard is. But it's just that situation of like, now she's kind of alone. So I think that was it was probably representative of who she was before, but also even more so now because she absolutely has no one. Even though that was, like I said, it was just her subconscious, but still. Which I doubt this is the end of that, but I'm curious to see what else ends up happening beyond just seeing Roman, like how bad the hallucinations might get and what that could turn into. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. But the real kicker in this situation I thought was kind of interesting was the fact of the matter is Allie looked into it and I was like, oh, she found something. And it's like, no, the Violet Lady comes back clean. And it's like, oh, but why do you look like you're disappointed? Because she points out something that was so interesting. It's like, I might have found nothing there, but I realized something before. The fact is, when you were threatening to run into that room, at no point did Jane go, no, don't do it. She was just okay 100% with you doing that. That's not the Jane I know. I'm like, oh my God, Allie, you noticed those things. Like, I didn't even think, it didn't cross my mind even think that. Because Jane would never let Kurt put himself in danger for her sake. Because for one, even when it was all said and done, she didn't even like reprimand him at the end of like, don't do something crazy like that again. I can't. No, like nothing like that came out of her mouth. And now it's like both of them are like, okay, so maybe there is something more to this situation. And I'm like, that's so good. She's done such a good job of trying to pretend to be Jane. And now she's slipping up even more. Because there's even the whole aspect of Roman being like, why didn't you just kill Kurt before? And she's like, it's too soon. Too soon for him or for you? Because there's some part of her, whether it be Remy herself or some semblance of Jane that's still there that won't let her kill Kurt, even though she claims to hate him so much. She could have probably found many different opportunities to kill him, but she didn't, Another interesting thing, kind of going back to the FBI really quickly, is the fact is between Rich and Reed, because Reed ended up pointing out something. It's like the way Rich was acting, like with Laurel. It's like, that's not the first time you've had to do that, huh? Like, who was it that got hospitalized? And Rich was kind of caught off guard because for him, it's like, normally I'm the one that's kind of making things awkward and kind of pulling truths out of people. And now that it's kind of on the other foot, I don't know how to really react. So, and I think maybe that kind of, it was that plus another conversation because Reed is having a hard time handling this Tasha situation. And, anytime Patterson would bring it up, he'd kind of shut it down. But then, you had Rich being like, the fact of the matter is you need to deal with this whole Zapata situation because it's like your feelings about this situation will affect you not only on a personal level, but also you as a cop. It's like, because the fact of the matter is you point out the fact that like, you're a great cop. You were able to deduce the whole thing about me and stuff like that before. So he ends up actually talking to Patterson, and I never even thought about it like that, why Reed would take this even harder. Like, obviously, it's Tasha, someone that was his best friend, and obviously they have their situation, so I knew that would affect him, but it goes even deeper, because for him, it makes him question everything. It's like, well, did Zapata ever love me? Were her feelings for me ever true, or was I just some mark? Which we know as the audience, that's not, it was real, and even Patterson points it out. It's like, no, like we know that this probably all happened. Her kind of being rogue like this was probably after she was fired. And also the fact of the matter is, her feelings for you were true. And Patterson was like, yeah, because Patterson knows firsthand, like, oh yeah, her feelings for you were true. And we know that, like, she kind of, like, from the very beginning, she's always kind of been a little bit open about her feelings for Reed because when he kind of opened his feelings up to her before, that's when she was kind of a little more receptive. Wasn't that in like season 2 when he kissed her that it came out and she kind of made it, things were a little weird and awkward between them, but you can obviously tell she was like overcompensating because the fact is she kind of had a thing for Reed. So it was like, it was probably always bubbling beneath the surface for both of them. It just took that one incident to kind of shake things loose. And eventually, they got to where they were. But that was just such an interesting thing to me, We also got introduced to another character in this episode because we see Tasha running from somebody because apparently they're trying to get information about some business that's connected to, like, it does contracts with the U.S. government, and the best way to do that would be through the FBI. And we saw Tasha running from someone, but it don't look like she really went into much detail about it. With we don't know what that was about. Maybe that's like CIA people tracking her down or something like that. Like, it was something like she doesn't talk to Madeline about, so it's kind of like that was, I guess, something more personal in her situation. I have no idea what that's about. But that lady Claudia, which I've seen her in stuff before. There was a short-lived sci-fi show, back in 2016, I want to say that was, called Hunters. I think she was one of the leads in that, the actress who plays Claudia. I feel like I've seen her in something else too. I think it was like the Hulu show The Path. I want to say, I think I vaguely remember seeing her in like commercials for that too. So, but nevertheless, she's kind of Madeline's, I guess, other right hand man type of situation now, because she's kind of like, oh yeah, like, I need you, basically wants her to torture Reed to get information so they could get access to the FBI system and stuff like that. But then Tasha's like, no, let's not do that. Even though at first she was kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll let you know whatever you need to know that you could torture Reed. But then we'll kind of change it to be like, we could just break into his place because I know all I need to know. And they were on their ways to doing it, except like this episode's current situation in the FBI building being shut down and stuff like that kind of messed up that plan. So it complicated things on Tasha's part, which is interesting because Claudia brought up something I thought was kind of fascinating, was kind of like, oh yeah, like, there's the whole, like, what I bring to the table is the fact is I'm able to cross a line that most people aren't willing to. Like, for example, in Tasha's case, like, not being able to deal with the whole Kira's daughter situation of just letting her see your face. And she's like, yeah, Madeline must not know. It's like, well, of course she doesn't, because if she knew, she would have killed you, which is like, yeah, that Madeline would have done that. So, which I'm wondering, how did Tasha, like, hide that from Madeline? How does Claudia know? I mean, I guess that kind of shows you how good she is at it. But we see at the end, it was so cool though, like, Reed noticed, like, the whole thing to his alarm system was open, and it made him suspicious, and he turns around and he kind of took Claudia down pretty quickly, which makes you wonder, did Tasha do that on purpose? But there Tasha is drawing the gun on him. It's like, damn, so it would have been so interesting. I mean, to be fair, Claudia's got dirt on Tasha, so it probably would be beneficial for her for Claudia to disappear, but we'll see. I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with that, because I'm kind of getting the inkling like, oh, she'll torture Reed for a while and Tasha's going to have to sit there and take it. Because the thing is, there's probably going to be a point where she's going to take Claudia out and then probably maybe explain herself to Reed and kind of apologize. We'll see if that ends up being engaged or not, but like, Tasha's definitely in a very compromising position. Then there's everything going on with Jane, which I'm so curious to see how this Boston thing plays out. Are they going to find out about Boston before Jane could go to Boston for more help? Because obviously got tapped into the information they need, so they're steps closer to finding out where, Shepard is. And obviously Allie and Kurt are very suspicious of Jane now, so I'm so excited to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good